going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now,
Jimothy.
So ladies and gents, we are back. It's been a couple of weeks since I did my last tier list, and obviously there's been a few major changes in the form of Phantom Knightmare with Promethean Princess and Snake Eye Popular being released into the wild. Literally fire decks are everywhere, ladies and gents, and I just wanted to go over what I consider to be the quote-unquote meta going forward. Now I do think that there's going to be a few changes coming down the line, and we are nearing a ban list. But in saying that, I can't see the fire decks going away, in all honesty. I feel like they're going to be around for at least the next format in some way, shape or form. Maybe a couple of hits to some of the older ones. But yeah, let's get into it, ladies and gents, and I'll discuss along the way. So starting us off, we have got Dragon Link. I'm going to put Dragon Link in playable. Now you can see the tiers here, ladies and gents. We've got like playable, we've got rogue. Dragon Link's not a rogue deck, but because of the power of fire decks and Dragon Link being a combo deck that does kind of like die to draw a little bit, you're probably just better off playing fire. You could argue for rogue right now just because like dragons are just solid, but they're just not anywhere near the fire decks at the moment, so I'll leave it in rogue. Sorry, playable. Math mech, I always leave it on here. The reason why I do, ladies and gents, is because I like to have a little bit of a barometer of decks that you should just not play. And I feel like Math mech is something that you play somewhere at your locals, like randomly. You might even see it randomly at locals, but never going to be at any kind of like tier 2, 1 or 1 event, just because it's just not consistent enough. Without Circular, the deck's just reverted to what it was before Circular, which was a fun rogue deck, so to speak, and I can't really see any of the firewall stuff trying to carry Math mech as it is. It's just not gonna happen, so I'm gonna leave Math mech somewhere at locals. Same with Plunder Patrol, ladies and gents. This is actually like one of my top decks. I really like Plunder Patrol. It's very technical. If you do not play the deck correctly, you can find yourself out of resources, but I find it very rewarding to be able to kind of like navigate through boards and end on a somewhat considerable end board, as well as just having big monsters that can attack. But it doesn't keep up with the meta, ladies and gents. Like I said, fire decks just literally just run this over. Dinosaurs, I'm gonna put that in rogue. Obviously it's playable, but I feel like it's rogue right now. Not a lot of people have experimented with some of the new cards like Kaitoptera, for example, and Hornsaurus. I do think those are good cards, and it has shifted the way the deck plays slightly, but it's still got its problems. It's still a little bit reliant on its normal summon sticking and actually working, and it's good at breaking boards just because of Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, but there are a few things that the fire decks just do which can effectively like nullify dinosaurs. If dinosaurs ever get misc to more than one, like they're a problem, just because misc just negates interaction basically. So it's always a bit of a difficult one to balance dinosaurs just because of the existence of Miscellaneousaurus. Raid Raptors, ooh, I'm gonna put them in the top of rogue. This deck is actually playable, ladies and gents, and it is a little bit formidable. In fact, I'm gonna put it a little bit higher than that. I'm gonna put it in playable. It does struggle going into boards. However, with the way that the deck is at the moment, you can play upwards of like 12 hand traps, so you still can facilitate like a 1-2 card combo, and you can still play like 12 hand traps or 12 non-engines, so to speak. That doesn't necessarily have to be hand traps. It could be board breakers, it could be extenders, for example. Like, the deck is solid. It does run into Nibiru, so you do need an avid pilot to be able to play this deck, because there's certain choke points or there's certain parts of the combo which require you to do certain things in order to be able to play through like certain hand traps. The deck can play through Droll a little bit. A lot of the stuff can dump or set directly onto the field. It does put up a towers that burns. I didn't even realize Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon has an effect that says no more effects for the rest of your turn. So if they have that stick stuck on the board with an XYZ material, they literally can just activate it at the start of their turn, and that's it. Like, the game's over. Like, you can't nib, you can't anything, even if you've got things on board. Like it's just crazy. So a very strong playable deck. It's just a little bit untested at the moment, and I was talking to Fabs earlier on, and he was saying to me, a deck that has 2 towers has to be good. Like, he just doesn't understand how it works, and digging into it a little bit myself, it does actually do a few things, and those town monsters are not to be scoffed at, especially when they can wipe your board and burn you, sometimes for game, depending on what you've got in your field. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Unchained, I'm going to put playable. It suffers from inconsistencies, just because of Shavara being at 1, but I have seen a few lists that have, well, seen a few dedicated Unchained players that have actually kind of like tutored their list out to be able to get the best out of the deck, and it is still somewhat playable. There's a new card in Phantom Knightmare. It's a level 6 fiend monster that helps you extend. I can't remember its name. Hopefully I'll put an image on the screen for you if I can remember what it's called, but that actually allows you to facilitate the kind of combos that it was doing before. It's nowhere near as strong, do not get it twisted, ladies and gents, but it still does allow you to do some of the things that you was previously doing. Orcus, this is literally for locals. I like this deck, but I probably wouldn't take it to like a bigger event just because of the nature of it. Branded, I'm gonna put Branded in a tier solid choice. It's probably going to be at the bottom of A tier solid choice, just overplayable, but I feel like it does a little bit more than these decks. Because of the nature of Branded, it doesn't really care too much about the popping effects that some of the Fire King stuff does. It can actually play through them, and with the Mirror Jade just wiping the field if it gets removed from the field is a bit of a problem as well, along with just being able to kind of like negate stuff that would actually destroy their monsters. Having Branded opening in the graveyard, for example, just another way that they can play around some of the fire, the popping and all that kind of stuff. So very, very strong deck. Doesn't die outright to Droll, but it does die to Ash. And Ash is a little bit contentious at the moment because of the fire decks and the existence of Heater. I don't know whether players are still going to be playing it going forward, or they're going to choose to side deck it, because if you do play Ash, you can literally play into your opponent's like strategy basically, but Ash is still a strong card and it will just stop Branded. However, good Branded players can play around it, like we've seen that now. So it's definitely a strong choice, ladies and gents, and a very, very solid choice in my opinion. Tierlist, man, it's still playable, but I'm calling it a rogue deck. Like I said this on my last one, and there was a few people that said I can't believe you put Tierlist there, but literally since I've done that, I haven't really seen Tierlist do much. Yes, the deck's still playable, you can still get a bit out of the deck, it's still semi-powerful, but I just feel like it's too inconsistent to be able to be taken to like an event over like 12 rounds, for example. Like there's too many variables that could go wrong for Tierlist that just stop it from being what it used to be basically. Virtual World, this is definitely a rogue deck. Its inconsistencies is what's stopping it from being better, because it doesn't outright die to anything too much, to be honest, and it can facilitate some crazy combos. It's got some nice interaction. It's a bit mid-rangey. You can have a couple of spells, a couple of traps set, and be able to play with a few monsters, and it does flood the board full of monsters. However, you can just brick, like if you've got the wrong hand and you can't resolve your Lulu, for example, like you could just be dead. Like you can't even put a body on board. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it in rogue. Dark Worlds, somewhere at locals. Dark Worlds is a crazy deck going first. The best deck almost going first into an unknown format. If nobody knows that this deck is coming, you just lose to it. It's not even a joke. But after siding, ladies and gents, and with everybody just running hand traps in their main, shifters, draws, like it's just a no for Dark World. It's just, yeah, it's a no from me. Put it that way. The Earthbound stuff with the runic cards, rogue. Like nothing more needs to be said about that. Now Goatee, Goatee, I'm gonna put here. In fact, let's rearrange some of these actually. Let's just slide Dragon Link down a little bit. Like no shade on Dragon Link, it's still powerful, but it's just not as strong as some of these ones here when it actually decides to move. There we go. Right, Goatee is actually interesting. I've been messing about with this, and I like the way that the deck is right now. It does have some consistency issues. If you can't get your combos started, it's very, very difficult, but there are a few ways that you can mitigate that. You can play the sunfish, the whitefish stuff. You can play the soupe line to be able to facilitate, or you can just go pure and just add hand traps. I'm kind of leaning more towards pure, but I do see the merits of having the other engines in, just because it allows you to combo regardless of the status of your normal summon, which is something that Goatee is dying to at the moment. Like if Leaffish gets stopped, or you don't have access to lifeless Leaffish, and you're playing the pure variant, you're kind of stuck somewhat. but depending on what your hand is. But if you've got the whitefish stuff in the deck, you can actually just keep extending, which is a really, really good thing, especially with like whitefish circular. And the new Goatee cards, they're crazy. Like the 2 monsters are crazy, and the trappies as well. So definitely an interesting deck. Very, very underexplored. They're saying it's the year of the fire, but you never know. Fish could be making a comeback. Exo Sister, I'm gonna put in Rogue just because the existence of Dimension Shifter. This deck just can't go second. Like, you need non-engine to go second. You need at least 4 cards in your hand to be able to do something going second, which is a little bit frustrating. I feel like the deck is still shy of just some kind of support, just one more card, like one more monster that allows this deck to be able to extend past just your normal summon dying and Martha not resolving. Because at the moment, you don't resolve Martha, you're dead. You need non-engine to be able to combat the meta, and then you're down to like a normal summon, and you gotta hope that your Martha is gonna resolve. And if it does, they might just pop your monsters anyway. So I don't know. I like this deck, but I just don't feel like it's the way forward right now. Labyrinth, easy, solid choice. It doesn't die to some of the stuff like Drows and Nibs and all that kind of stuff, but Ghost Bow and Ash Blossom just obliterate this deck. And it's a very, very costly trade, yeah, when you're pitching some of your cards from your hand off some of the furniture pieces just for your Welcome Labyrinth, for your big Welcome Labyrinth, to get Ashed or Ghost Bow. It's just, it feels so bad, it's so rough. And I said this before, like, Labyrinth has literally got everything it could ever ask for, and it's still not enough, just because it's a trap deck. Like, trap decks need something else to just be better. I don't know, it's weird. Obviously in a grind game, this deck wins like 90% of its matches, but getting to that point where it's got its resources going is so difficult, especially going second, and especially into the fire decks, which are just popping cards, removing cards left, right and center. SP Little Knights a thing. Like, it's just too difficult for it to like keep up with the fire decks that are just outpace it basically. But it's still a solid choice. It will batter a lot of the road decks that are below it like with ease. It's like, it's not even a joke. Centurion, definitely playable, 1 card combo deck. I think this deck's boring, I'll be honest. And I haven't actually played the deck, but I've seen it played, I've played against it, and it feels so dry. Like, I'd rather play Sword Soul. I know Sword Soul is a little bit, in fact Sword Soul's a little bit better in a sense, because it can actually go second, but because this deck can Calamity Lock, it's just playable. Like, you will just win games like outright. People won't expect it, or they just can't do anything about it because they ain't drawing the right hand trap. You don't play into Nibiru, you don't really play into Droll. It's hyper consistent, and you can play like a billion non-engine. Like, it's a frustrating deck, like, just because it's boring, but it is what it is, isn't it? Chimera, I'm gonna put in Rogue. Now, I do like the look of some of the illusion monsters that are coming out, and Chimera Illusion could start to be its own thing, but at the moment it's arguable that you might need to mix it with branded, but then you'd probably just do better playing pure branded anyway. So that's why I'm going to leave it at Rogue. It's still a strong deck. It's definitely better than Exo Sister. Let's move Exo Sister down there. Because if you do hand trap this deck and you don't hand trap it properly, you can actually start your turn with like 4 cards in hand or 3 cards in hand, depending on how many hand traps you've thrown at the opponent. So yeah. Pearly, oh my days. Pearly's playable. I don't think it's what it used to be. It's got a semi-good Fire King matchup just because of the nature of E-Pearly Noir or X-Pearly Noir, shuffling away the resources. But like, I don't know, like, going first, if you interact with the deck in a way that it can't recover from, it's dead. Like, sometimes you can just imperm one of the cats and the turn's over, like, or just Ash Blossom something, turns over, Cosmic Cyclone the field spell and get rid of their board. They can't recover. Like, it's crazy. Like, this deck used to be so consistent, and now it just seems like, I don't know, it seems like it's just fallen by the wayside. People have started to stop including like Herald of the Abyss in the extra deck because they're just not seeing Pearly, and it's for good reason, and it. So yeah. Snake Eye, pure Snake Eye, that's the S tier deck without a shadow of a doubt. And I'd probably say I do feel like this version, the pure Snake Eye version, is going to be the version that tends to kind of like be more prominent as time goes on, just because of the existence of Omni Negation. there are a few things that people taking into the format, soul release being one of them, and being able to negate that is just, it's like a no-brainer. So you will start seeing barrel load savages, Baron de Fleurs on Enfield, Appaloosa for example, just to be able to kind of play around some of those like crazy spell cards, just to kind of like try at least to stop them, because we all know that the interactions are layered in the fire decks. Like, they're coming from graveyard, coming from hand, there's pieces moving around on the board. It's crazy. Like, you're getting pops, you're getting summons, you're getting IP Masquerena. So like, having an Omni Negation alongside all of that stuff just makes the deck even stronger, and I do feel like that's where it's gonna go going forward. Cash Tira, this is definitely at the top of playable, definitely. Let's move Goaty down. Yeah, let's move Goaty there. Cash Tira's nuts. It's a little bit bricky, not gonna lie, but there's a couple of ways that you can play it. You can play the Heat Soul variant, where you just like drawing through your deck. You can actually play was it Duo Dawn King Kali Yuga variant, where you can just lock your opponent out of the game going first, or you could just like heavy tech it for just going second. It's really, really flexible, and with D-Shifter in the format and this deck just being able to just put up big bodies anyway, like, it's a solid choice. I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely a solid choice. It's not as consistent as some of the decks above it, and it will lose because of its consistency, and sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to play through boards, especially if you only see like Wraith Soft for example. But it's a very, very solid choice, in my opinion anyway. Goblin Riders, this is, I'm gonna somewhere at locals. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I feel like this deck needs a little bit more support, and it probably needs a negation. Like, it spits out loads of monsters, but like, I don't see where it's going with them. Like, I've seen Utopic Future Draco on end boards, which is fine. That's a good card, but like, you have to heavily invest into doing that, and you could just get nibbed before that even like happens. And what I've noticed about the cards are, if you keep a XYZ monster off the field, it's really, really difficult for them to play. Like, I was playing it with Branded, I just popped every XYZ monster or banished it as it was summoned, like, and I just couldn't do anything about it. And because it requires so many resources into making that XYZ monster, you'll find after the second or third XYZ monster, if they've got a cracked hand, they've got nothing left on hand, in their hand, they've got nothing left on field. And with fire decks, you can pop at least 2 cards. Like, it's silly, like. So along with all the hand traps that fire decks are allowed to play as well, like, it's rough. So yeah, until you get some support, I'd say just take it to locals if you want. The Flame Swordsman Infernoble stuff, it's rogue. I don't know enough about it. It still can make the same board as it used to, but it's a little bit more fragile, which is why I've put it in rogue, in my opinion. It's definitely better than Exo Sister. In fact, let's put it here. Definitely better than Exo Sister. But yeah, it's still a rogue deck in my opinion. Manadium, this is definitely playable. Let's put this here. In fact, Manadium's probably a little bit stronger than... in fact, it's probably next to Cash Tira. Manadium's Kryptonite is actually Droll. Why is it gone there? There we go. Manadium's Kryptonite is actually Droll and Lockbird. Everybody's maining that at the moment. So, like, Manadium just can't play. Like, it's not even a joke. Like, they just can't play. They need to add loads of cards to their hand. Failing that, though, if they don't see Droll, like, this deck will just go off, and it just puts up a board that just says you can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's always going to be strong. It's not the most interactive and fun gameplay, but it will happen. Like, it will still games just because of that. And if you don't see Droll, or people start shying away from Droll because the fire decks can actually just play through Droll quite easily, like, you might see a few more Manadian players like resurfacing. But at the moment, it's just a playable deck. It's a strong deck, but it dies to Droll too easily. Fluunderees. Ooh, where do I want to put this? I'm going to put it here, right next to Cash Tira. There's an argument between the two. I feel like Cash Tira is a little bit more useful because they've got bigger monsters that got additional effects, whereas the tiny birds, like, if you negate a couple of them, they're just sat on field and they're just targets to just be beaten up. Like, they got like 600 attack. Like, they're not intimidating at all. But the deck is a problem. Like, M-Pen is silly. It's quite budget. Like, it's got a solid game plan, and the non-engine carries this deck. Probably the best shifter deck out there, just because it can, like if it plays around Shifter properly, you can actually Shifter twice in one game, which is crazy because you can just banish it out of your graveyard, have an empty graveyard, and just trigger another one, which is just crazy. So definitely a solid choice. Struggles going second and requires non-engine to break boards, but if that's the only problem with the deck, then I feel like it's a very, very playable deck. And Harpy's Featherstorm is just straight up ignorant. It's not even a joke. Magispectors, this is a rogue deck that I've been testing. I don't understand why Kirin's not unbanned, but Magispectors does have a few quirks to it. What I found with the deck though, and this is the reason why I put it in rogue, like it can't out big monsters effectively. Like you need spells and traps to do that, and you're relying on getting them out of your deck and resolving. And with Droll in the format, it can hurt Magispectors somewhat because they do add a lot of cards to their hand. Their first turn combo can end on a nib token as well, which is a little bit of a problem because they don't have any negates and they don't have any back row removal as well, which is crazy. Well, in-engine back row removal, so it can be a bit of an issue. If it's allowed to play though, it's not nice to play against. Can't be targeted, can't be destroyed, and if it does get Kirin back, you've got a bounce that literally can't be interacted with. Other than like Omni Negation, do you get what I'm saying? So it's busted. So yeah, very, very interesting deck. Voiceless Voice, this is probably the, let's move you down there. This is probably the top of a solid tier. It's not S tier by any means. It does fail to draw, but it's very, very solid. It's got a very linear game plan, but I always find that decks like this do well at tournaments just because it's very simple to play and you can use all your energy thinking about your interactions, because we all know what the deck's going to do. It's going to put up the ritual monster, it's going to have low on field, it's going to have the continuous spell, and then it's going to summon Cerevis out of the deck and then negate a summon, and it's very difficult to play through. We all know what's coming, but then it's difficult to deal with it. So very solid deck, and it is getting support, so hopefully it will allow the deck to get a few more lines and be able to be a little bit more flexible with its plays basically. I can't remember why I put this in. This is probably another Dragon Link. Let's put this down there. Rescue Ace. I'm gonna put it as one of the best decks just because I feel like Rescue Ace is in between like S tier and A tier. It's a fire deck, but it can't abuse some of the cards that the other fire decks can abuse, like Popular, for example. It can still play some of the other stuff, but the problem is, and I don't know who was speaking to about it, is just drawing one of the trap cards like in your opening hand. Like you do not want to see that, and there's like 4 or 5 cards in the deck that you just don't want to see. You just want to search them, and especially when you're playing a 40 card deck, you are going to see them at some point in the tournament, especially if you're playing multiple rounds. So for that reason, it can be a little bit jarring, because that just means you got a brick in your hand and you just can't use it for anything. And playing into these Fire King boards, which are just popping, negating stuff, like you need as much resources as possible, and having a brick is just yeah, you can't even throw it. So yeah. Sprite is playable, but I'm gonna put it in rogue. I like Sprite. I think it's solid, but the end boards aren't enough, and the follow-up's just not there, ladies and gents. Not for me. Like the board gets cracked, it's very difficult to recover. It can get cracked pretty easily. It does put an intimidating board depending on the hand and what it's played through, but it's just not enough at the moment. Fire Kings, yeah, I'm gonna go with solid choice. Probably it's out of these two for the top 2 decks, to be honest, in my opinion. I feel like Fire Kings is up there with like Snake Eye. You can do all the stuff that Snake Eye can do. It's got a little bit more utility just because of some of the main deck monsters being able to like pop and like facilitate this continuous loop of just like summoning monsters, destroying stuff on field. So for that reason, it's up there, like no shadow of a doubt. The next one I've got is generators, runic generators. Just keep this at locals, ladies and gents. Like I can't see this deck doing anything in like a 10-round tournament. There's been a few tops that it's had. It is a powerful strategy, but it just won't compete with some of these. Like it loses the field spells. Like the deck strategy is over, and it's very easy to lose the field spells and just get ashed on like the field spells. It's rough. So yeah, and it dies to some of the cards that are in the format, like Droll, Ash, Bow. Like yeah, just don't do it. Vanquish Soul, my beloved Vanquish Soul. This is playable. I feel like it's better than Rogue. It does reward you for understanding matchups and being able to time your interactions correctly, but it doesn't do enough in terms of like what it's hoping to do. Like, its end board isn't intimidating enough, or it isn't like oppressive enough to be able to consider it to be anything other than like a playable deck. It's solid. It can go second somewhat because there is enough space for like hand traps, but the deck relies solely on seeing Raisin. Like, if you see Raisin, regardless of what happens, you're feeling good about things. You don't see Raisin, you might as well just go to scoop phase, which is collect all your cards up and go to the next game, because it's just that pivotal. Like, you need to be able to like get your deck to function, and not seeing Raisin just stops it from working basically. Salomon Greats, I'm gonna put this up here actually. I wouldn't say it's as good as Vanadium, but it's definitely up there because it can play loads of non-engine. Like, Salomon Great can play just a plethora of hand traps, like 12 to 15 hand traps if you really wanted to push it out there, and it's got a solid game plan. It can utilize Promethean Princess. It can now play through Nib depending on hand, especially with what's it called, Fire Recovery. I've seen people use that just to play through Nib. They've intentionally overextended, got a load of back row set, and then just activated Fire Recovery after being nibbed, and still ended on a board with a Salomon Great monster on field, which turns on their traps, as well as being able to like do other things. So I feel like it's still solid. It's a good choice, and it's still getting support as well, which is crazy. It's getting Code of Soul, I believe. So, and EMP Meow Mine, which came out in Phantom Knightmare, which is another little bit of boost for the deck. So definitely a solid choice, ladies and gents. But that's it. That's my tier list. Obviously, it's the year of the fire. We all know that fire decks are just like running it at the moment. But if you feel like I've missed anything, definitely get at me in the comment section below. Obviously, I haven't represented every single deck that's in the format. These are just my thoughts on some of the decks that are out there at the moment. But if you've got any changes, let me know in that comment section below. And we find ourselves at the end of another video. As always, if you did like this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that beautiful good stuff, and I will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.